Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday. I'm supposed to be here with Cliff, but I don't know where Cliff is. So if he joins the Zoom, he's going to be on the show. I hope he joins the Zoom because he just texted me a photo. He is at Barnes and Noble right now. And let me see if I can bring up the photo. Sorry that I'm not as high tech as we'd like to be, but check this out. Direct from Cliff Broadway. He is at Barnes and Noble right now. He's got the new book from J.R.R. Tolkien in his hand. So if he gets home in time, any minute now, we're I'm gonna have him go through this book right now. I mean, if we have to be here for another 3 hours, we are getting all the details out of this book. Period. So stay with us. I don't know how much time he has available, but I want to know everything that is in J.R.R. Tolkien's notebook. The Hand of the Professor is now in Cliff's hand, and he's on his way home right now. Uh, Dominique Miller says it's already on my Christmas list. I see all of our regular Steven and Princess Toy Nerd, and I see Cecilia and Dominique and Arne and Sarah Draper. Great to see you, man. Sarah was talking on our Facebook group. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, search the One Ring Net, and you can find the worlds and works of J.R.R. Tolkien. She was so excited to plan her trip to New Zealand to coincide with the filming of Lord of the Rings, as many of you American fans did when Peter Jackson was filming, because some Americans might have trickled onto the set and became extras and orcs in the background because they needed more people. Who knows? Um, Unfortunately, COVID happened. So Sarah did not make it to New Zealand yet. But because production's moving to Scotland now, it's a lot easier and cheaper to fly to Scotland than it is New Zealand, and it's quicker. So, Sarah, you might have a chance uh, to make it into the show. Hello, everybody. Brendan Marr is watching on Twitch. Leslie is and Jackie are watching from New Zealand. Eruvandi and Cecilia are watching on YouTube. We're streaming on all the channels. Torn Tuesday. We've been doing this for 10 years now. I can't believe, you know, uh, 10 years. That's the longest relationship I've ever had with anything, any job, any other person, and it happened to be with Cliff Broadway. So I joke a lot, but he is one of the best Tolkien fans in the world. He has leveraged his knowledge of Tolkien into producing the feature documentary Ringers Lord of the Fans. He's co-authored 2 or 3 books. He's interviewed the Tolkien family, and he's been everywhere. And I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to call him a friend. And speak friend and enter, as they say. And wait, Zoom. What is this glitching? Hey, look! I spoke friend, and he entered. He's not. I can't hear you, Cliff. Yes. Hold on. Wait. They still can't hear you. Hold on. Let me. They still can't hear you. Wait 1 second. It might be on my end. Hold on. All right. Now talk. No, I don't think anyone can hear you. Hold on. Oh boy. Cliff, what has happened? Hold on. Can't hear you.
And now I am back.
Oh, you pressed a magic button.
No, I don't hear you now.
What do you mean you don't hear me now? Can you hear me now? Something, 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 my parents' music. No, I can't hear. Man, you'd think after 10 years we would have this figured out.
Now do you hear me okay? Yes.
I can hear you now.
Can everybody in the whole
Yes.
live show hear everything now? Okay,
yes,
I think that works.
There we go.
Okay. So everybody's all right with that.
What is this old devilry? Cliff, I wish we could say that this was an ongoing gag in the show, kind of, that we've always had audio problems since like the first episode, but it's not a gag. We're just
not an ongoing gag.
We're just working for free.
It's crazy. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
Spartan says, "Wait, you have a new book?" No, Cliff doesn't have a new book. J.R.R. Tolkien has a new book. Like literally, the professor, 50 years from the grave, is still publishing. And I will add that this is the 11th book that J.R.R. Tolkien has published since the last Game of Thrones book.
You know what?
That is beautiful.
That is actually saying something. I'm glad that everybody can hear me now. Hi. I want to say my apologies to the live audience. I had to get all the way to Bree and back because the nearest bookstore is all the way in the village of Bree. And I had a pony ride, and the pony was the shortest legged little fat pony, and I couldn't get there fast enough. It wasn't like I had Shadowfax to get there really quickly and show them the meaning of haste. I had the slowpoke little roly-poly pony, but at least he got me there safely. And I've got my hands on this amazing book. And so I think Cliff, I'm done. I'm done with that stupid joke. But welcome everybody to Torn Tuesday. I'm sure that in my absence, Justin has already properly introduced the show. But I was so excited.
I introduced you.
Excited.
I also made promises your body can't keep because I said you're going to sit here and read that whole book to us until you're done.
Oh, no, that can't be possible. But I do want to read some bits and bobs from it. That's for sure. Definitely.
All right. So why don't you, since you just got the book and you just sat down, why don't you start skimming through it while I go through the news, and then I'll bring you back in, and we'll talk into the book. Oh, what?
I am just like, wow. I'm just looking at this. Look at this. This is a section on the aging process of the Numenorians, right here. Wow.
Wait, okay. and Amazon show is going to Numenor. Wait, so we're getting this is spoilers. This is legit spoilers because this is not published before. Maybe. And Amazon's making a show about this. This legit is spoilers. Do I even want to know?
Note on the Elvish economy. This is interesting. On the lands and beasts of Numenor, over here near the end of the book.
You know, maybe what we do, Cliff, here is why don't you list the chapter headings, and let's let the audience decide where we start.
Oh my gosh, but there's so much. Okay.
Choose a few that are interesting to you, and then let's let the audience.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Hi Andrew in the live chat, and I want to say hello to Princess Toy Nerd and Nicholas and Stephen. Everybody's there. Dan, hey, and RJ, the whole crew. What a wonderful bunch of people in the live show. But to be quite honest, no, they did not send me a review copy. I went down to the brick and mortar retail bookstore, and I shoved over $35 myself to buy this myself so I could have this as quickly as I could get my hands on it. And that's totally cool. Oh, wow. All right. Let's see. Oh my gosh, there's even sketches in here. Uh, there are there are sketches in here of a flat Earth, a flat Arda. Um,
Hang on. Whoa. Hey.
wow.
Whoa. 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 Whoa.
This is so intriguing. Okay. All right. We're going to take a look at the the table of contents real quick, and let's go over some of the interesting chapters. Okay. Um,
So you guys at home, listen to the chapters.
okay.
You can and text me at the phone number that you see on screen, or you can put it in the chat because that's on screen too. And you know the best chapter wins, and we'll dive in first there.
Okay. In in the beginning, we should state that there are three parts. Okay. There's part one, part two, part three, and here in part one, it's called Time and Aging. There's an introduction, and then there's an interesting opening chapter called The Valian Year. Now, that's already been available. Online, there are preview pages that have been available on a lot of online booksellers' websites. And that section, The Valian Year, has already been visible in public for a couple of weeks now.
Okay, so we don't need
People
to
have
talk
talked
about
about
that.
it. Okay. Okay. Here's a chapter called Of Time in Arda. Here's another chapter called Natural Youth and Growth of the Quendi, referring to the elves. Okay, this is intriguing. The March of the Quendi. Uh, Aging of Elves. That would be section 11. Aging of Elves. Concerning the Quendi in their mode of life and growth. Oh, okay. A generational scheme. That's another section. Here's one. Elvish life cycles. That's that's actually number 11. Elvish life cycles. And then time and its perception. That would be number 19 is Elvish life cycles, and then section 20, time and its perception. Moving on to part 2, body, mind, and spirit. Here's a section called beauty and goodness. Here's a section called hair. Here's another section called beards. Beards, okay. Another intriguing section called mind pictures. Okay. Knowledge and memory. Oh, this is going to be juicy. Fate and free will. Looks interesting to me. The visible forms of the Valar and Maiar. That sounds intriguing. The visible forms of the Valar and Maiar. Ooh. Section 15. Elvish reincarnation. Okay. And another, part 3. In part 3, it's the world, its lands, and its inhabitants. And it has a beginning section called Dark and Light. Another chapter, the primal impulse. Here you go. The making of Lembas. There's a whole section on the making of Lembas. Okay. A note on the Elvish economy. Let's see. The founding of Nargothrond. That would be intriguing. From Rider to the White Rider. Another section. Lives of the Númenóreans. Section 13 of the lands and the beasts of Númenor. Section 14, a note on the consumption of mushrooms. Here you go, a section called Galadriel and Celeborn, and a note on the dwarvish voices. Wow, how about that? And this last section, the rivers and the beacon hills of Gondor. Oh, there's all kinds of great stuff in here. Wow.
All right,
Okay,
Cliff. So I've been watching the text messages 53064 Frodo and the chat room. Let's focus on 2 chapters to start. One,
okay.
hair, Hair.
Okay.
And
Let's go to
second,
hair.
on the reincarnations of elves.
Ah.
All right. So dive into those two chapters. I'm gonna do the news, and then we'll bring you back.
Hair. Okay. And another one about
You said the reincarnation of elves or something like that.
that is uh uh yeah, elvish reincarnation. Yeah.
Okay.
Page
So
246.
let's
Okay.
start with those two chapters. We'll bring you back in
Okay.
a second. All right, folks. Let's go to the news. The big news this week, and we get so many tweets and emails about this all the time. I'm so glad that there's finally some information about it. Bill Hunt at the Digital Bits is reporting the Middle Earth 31 disc collector's edition has a street date, and it's in October. So that's like, it's August now. Well, I guess tomorrow's September. So we're about a month and a half away from the ultimate collector's edition Middle Earth box set. It's going to have all 6 movies in there. And if you look at it, 31 discs. It says the Lord of the Rings had theatrical, the Lord of the Rings extended editions, and both are in 4K. And then the Hobbit theatrical and the Hobbit extended, both in 4K, and then one bonus disc of new features in Blu-ray 1080p HD. It's not the unicorn edition that you keep talking about. So this is a 31 disc. So if you don't already own any of the Hobbit or Lord of the Rings 4Ks from this last year, this is the package to get. We're gonna go. You know what? Let's go to Amazon right now because you can order it. We're gonna put Lord of the Rings 4K, and you can order the current versions. And let's see, is there the ultimate edition? There's a steelbook version. Well, I can't, it's not in the first thing. Maybe they took it down. There was a pre-order link, but it's not there anymore. Anyway, so Bill Hunt of the Digital Bits reporting that October 16th is this. Now, the other big release for comparison, Neon Genesis Evangelion is releasing for the first time in like more than a decade, and it's the complete series, and it's got like 30, or it's got like 13 discs or whatever like that. So, oh, there it is, Middle Earth 6 Film Ultimate Collector's Edition, $249. It's $250 for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, both theatrical and extended edition Blu-rays. 4K. Does it include all of the commentary tracks? I don't know. But I do know that it does not include the appendices. Now, I want you guys in the chat, have you guys watched the appendices as much as you've watched the films? Because my copies of the appendices are wearing out. Honestly, I've got some scratches on some of these DVDs of the appendices. They're still so fascinating to watch. So I wish Amazon, or I wish Warner Brothers, gosh, a little slip of the tongue there. Warner Brothers would change their minds and for $250 include the appendices. So October 26th is the date. I got it wrong. Not the 16th. October 26th. JG from Space in the chat room says no appendices means no purchase for me. RJ, or no, that was RJ. JG says no appendices is a deal breaker. I mean, guys, and not include the appendices. So, well, we've talked about that with Michael Pellerin, and he's explained to us some of the stuff. So anyway, October 26th, you can pre-order it now worldwide at UK retailers, and you can pre-order it at Amazon. 31 discs, no appendices. It does include on that one new disc. It does include the legendary Cannes Film Festival presentation reel. If you guys remember, a few months ago, we did an epic Cannes reunion featuring Mark Ordesky, Rick Porras, Richard Taylor. We had everybody there. We had even the head of Variety telling us that it was the most wonderful experience ever. So the legendary Cannes Film Festival film reel is included. And because it's on a Blu-ray, the expectation is it will be up-res to 1080p, HD. Also included, I don't know if you guys saw this earlier, you might live near an Alamo Drafthouse Cinemas. But when the pandemic started loosening up and theaters started reopening, Alamo Drafthouse Cinemas nationwide had a screening of the trilogy over several days, and they filmed interviews with the entire cast. We're talking Elijah, Sean. They had a whole Hobbit reunion. Vigo was involved. Vigo's there. Orlando, Peter Jackson. So these are amazing, amazing cast reunions. They had a different reunion for each of the 3 Lord of the Rings films that they showed exclusively in cinemas. Warner Brothers has got that content, and that's what we're getting here. So it's going to be a charming reunion. I wonder if Warner Brothers is going to put a high-res version of Josh Gad's epic reunion on this disc. Wouldn't that be fun? Just to have all these reunions on one disc for us. So that's the big one. That's the big one that's happening. Any more word? David in the chat room, good question. Any word on the more deluxe version of this 4K? So, unfortunately, David, this is the deluxe version that Warner Brothers announced. This is the deluxe version. They've taken out all the appendices, but they're putting in all the cast reunions and the Cannes footage. So this really is kind of a 20th anniversary special edition for this. This is the deluxe version. So this is what we're getting. Hey, shout out to the Digital Bits for getting us the scoop. You can find it at thedigitalbits.com. Just it's like the second or third news story, and he's got a link to the Amazon pre-order for this. So this is, and despite all of the missing bonus features that we would love to see, I can definitively tell you this is one of the best looking 4K movies in all of cinema. This is one of the best transfers. This is the reason to get a 4K player. And this movie looks so good. It looks different than the Blu-rays. Like they recolor timed everything. So this movie looks, the Fellowship looks most stunning. The Fellowship feels like you're back in the theater watching it for the first time. So this is wonderful. Princess Toy Nerd says, I want it all, I'm just not liking the price tag. Monkismo says, will it include the Russian Lord of the Rings from the 1980s? Gosh, wouldn't that be fun? Maybe that's like a secret thing. Like, you got to press the button. Remember when you had to press the menu in a certain order and you could unlock that special feature on secret menus. Remember the secret menus? So those are the DVDs, and then these are the Blu-rays. So we'll see. RJ says, when do you think we'll first get the trailer for Amazon show this Christmas? We're going to talk about that in a second. The other big news of the week is Fellowship of Fans has a huge scoop. He's just been crushing it on just getting this info. Who are your sources? Because we'd like to meet them. No, but Fellowship Fans keep doing great work. He says the Dwarven King in Amazon's show is said to look strikingly similar to Tormund from Game of Thrones, and it was a running joke on set about the similarity between the Game of Thrones character. It seems that the Dwarven King is based on Tormund's look. Tormund's look. Man, I'm getting whatever. So the huge news. So to give you a visual of what the first major Dwarven King, possibly the first major Dwarven King that we'll see in, remember, 7 rings were gifted to the Dwarf Lords. So we're going to meet at least 7 Dwarf Kings at some point during the show. So Tormund as a Dwarf King, I'd pay to see that. Well, Amazon's hoping that you will pay to see it. Let's go back. Actor Owain Arthur is an important Dwarven character and filmed scenes with Robert Arameo on the Dwarven sets in the first 2 episodes. So this is J.A. Bayona's episodes. So this is the pilot. Owain Arthur, you may remember him from Disney's Dumbo reboot. Remember a couple years ago, Disney redid Dumbo as a feature film, not animation, but a real film. Owain Arthur, I believe, was in that film. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat room. That's why you're here. So it's quite possible that Owain Arthur grew a beard and is going to be a Dwarven King. So it's looking good. Robert Arameo has a stand-in double for the height perspective. So this Fellowship of Fans is confirming what we said a few weeks ago, that there are size and stunt doubles. So they are shooting this with forced perspective. So this is awesome to see. And we know Robert Arameo is who was in Game of Thrones as well. He's playing Elrond. The other note that Fellowship of Fans has right here, the dwarves have amazing dragon scale armor, with some being as heavy as 20 kilograms on set. Most dwarven extras were older males, 50 to 60 years old or older. So if you can imagine the dwarves that Elrond meets, and I'm going to add to this and say the dwarves are in Moria. So we're going to Moria in the pilot. We're going to see Moria at its greatness. We're going to see Dwarven King who runs Moria. He wears dragon scale armor, and he's surrounded by old dwarves, old men dwarves. Well, I guess men or women, because they all have beards, right? So, like, there could be big bearded 60-year-old men playing dwarven women. It's true to Tolkien. Maximal in the chat room says this is so exciting. Who is thinking that Robert Arameo might be playing Celebrimbor and not Elrond? Andrew, that's an interesting thing. But based on how the casting went down, we believe that Will Poulter was originally cast as Elrond, and then there was a scheduling conflict, so Will Poulter had to leave. And then Robert Arameo was announced, and I forget the language. For some reason, I believe that Robert Arameo from Game of Thrones was announced as Will Poulter's replacement. And we know Will Poulter was going to be Elrond for ifs, ands, and buts. So the expectation is that Elrond will be meeting the King of the Dwarves. So this is really, really exciting. Now, Cliff, let's
Hello.
bring you back. You've been reading some of this new book, and you've got a smirk on your face.
Do I? I don't know what to say. Do I look like I'm Smirking, maybe. I don't know. Well, hello everybody. I don't, I don't know what to say about that Ultimate Edition, except it does not include, and we haven't even said this, and I heard you talk a lot about that Ultimate Edition, and I'm really grateful for our good friend Bill Hunt at the Digital Bits giving us this scoop and the information.
Friend of the show. He's been on the show.
He's been a friend of the One Ring for such a long, long time. But that stuff doesn't include missing, you know, shots of Arwen at Helm's Deep, the missing
Faramir's
footage.
wedding. Faramir's wedding was shot. We know.
The missing footage of Faramir's wedding. There's extra scenes, a lot of extra scenes that were shot, and stuff that's just not there. There's the gag reel, the infamous, all the bloopers and the misfires and all the funny stuff, and that's because Michael Pellerin and Peter Jackson together had a budget, and they wanted to put a budget together to actually make this other stuff, and Warner Brothers didn't pony up the money, so they didn't make that extra stuff. So this new Ultimate Edition does not have all those extras that we've been talking about for a long time.
Well, so, and to be fair, let's just let me give some context here. It was always Peter Jackson and Michael Pellerin's plan back in 2005 to have this extra stuff that on the Peter famously said on the 25th anniversary of this movie, I'll add some stuff back in and we'll have some amazing stuff. So that was always the plan. Unfortunately, Mike Pellerin and Jackson planned this awesome extras based on 2005 DVD budgets, which were extraordinarily large. There was a huge industry because the studios were making so much money off DVDs. They're like, cool, let's do it. Yeah, you know what? Let's make the menus look like maps and stuff like that. Like, there's a reason DVDs look so good at the time. So right now, fast forward 20 years, Peter Jackson and Michael Pellerin have this budget in their minds, like, oh, it's going to cost us this to do what we want to do, and the realities are those budgets don't exist. Like, people don't buy DVDs as much anymore, and streaming pays pennies compared to what DVDs used to. So the only thing I can think of that might happen is this last year, Warner Brothers did a deal with Zack Snyder, and they did the Zack Snyder Justice League. He re-edited and reshot and redid this whole movie for HBO Max. So I think next year, or when Return of the King turns 20 in 2 years, I predict that there might be a possibility that HBO Max goes to Peter Jackson and says, hey, how much money do you need to make a HBO Max exclusive version of Lord of the Rings, including Faramir's wedding, including Frodo's nightmare, including some of this stuff? So, I don't know. That's my prediction here or there. I don't know.
Including Eowyn fighting against Uruk-hai, who had come inside the glittering caves to attack the Rohan refugees under the ground beneath Helm's Deep. All that was filmed as well, too.
RJ says I doubt it. I doubt it, too. I don't know. I don't know. We're just talking. I do want to respond right now to the chat room to Rory. Great. You're a regular, and I love you. But everything that we say can be proven untrue when the show comes out. This is the best part. This is the best time about being a fan right now, because we don't know anything about Amazon's show. We don't know anything about New Line's new Rohirrim anime, and we don't know anything about the future plans of the Lord of the Rings Unicorn Edition. So all we can do is guess. And even if we know something is fact, even if we know that Arameo is Elrond, they can change it at the last minute. And proof positive, let's again go to Zack Snyder, who replaced an entire actor in his zombie film. That Vegas zombie film that he just did, he literally replaced an entire actor with another actress. in post production. So even if we know that someone is a certain character in the show right now, it's completely possible that they change their minds and he's not or she's not and he's totally replaced. So it's all rumors until it's not. And it can be fact now and it can change later, and that's the part that's fun right now. Cliff, I was going through some old posts of the One Ring, and we had this rumor for like 3 weeks that Enya had been contacted about the Hobbit soundtrack. It didn't turn true. It was not
Uh-huh.
true, and she was not involved. And they ended up hiring 3 men, including everyone's favorite Icy Fire singer. So like it's true until it's not true. It's rumors until, but this is the fun part. So and the production might be having fun with it too. They might leak some stuff to us that is totally wrong, and we run with it. Whatever, get the fans hype. Like this is the fun part. But the
Was
really
that an
fun.
was that an oblique reference to Ed Sheeran? Is that what that was?
Don't say his name 5 times, please.
No, don't
We
say
do not
Ed
need
Sheeran
to. You
5
said
times.
it twice. Whoa, hey,
because look,
calm down.
he already showed up in Game of Thrones. Speaking of, so next thing we
He-
need is a cameo of him somewhere in the Amazon show,
Oof.
somewhere, I guess.
He's our candy man. Now, Cliff, you have got
That's funny.
you have got a copy of J.R.R. Tolkien's brand new book.
Mhm.
Yeah, the
I do.
chapter names got everyone in the chat room super excited. We narrowed it down to 2 chapters. Let's dive in. You've been checking it out.
I have, and I'm so excited. Okay, first of all, I'm going to start with a page in the foreword because it quotes an original foreword by Christopher Tolkien from the previous existing History of Middle-earth series. And this is really intriguing, and it's going to give you guys a real strong idea of exactly what the editor, Carl Hostetter, has put together here in this volume. And welcome, everybody, to a little preview of the nature of Middle-earth. In the foreword, Carl says, in his own foreword to Morgoth's Ring, which is volume 10 of the History of Middle-earth series, I have those all right there on my shelf, right there. Christopher Tolkien writes of his father that at the end of the 1950s, and following the publication of The Lord of the Rings, begin quote from Christopher Tolkien. Meditating long on the world that he had brought into being and was now in part unveiled, referring to the publication of The Lord of the Rings in the 50s, he had become absorbed in analytic speculation concerning its underlying postulates. Let me read that sentence one more time, because if you want to know what you're going to spend $35 on, it's on this. Professor Tolkien, meditating long on the world that he had brought into being and was now in part unveiled, he had become absorbed in analytic speculation concerning its underlying postulates before he could prepare a new and final Silmarillion. He must satisfy the requirements of a coherent theological and metaphysical system, rendered now more complex in its presentation by the supposition of obscure and conflicting elements in its roots and in its tradition. Among the chief structural conceptions of the mythology that he pondered in those years were the myth of light, and that's capital L, light, the nature of Eman, the immortality and the death of the elves, the mode of their reincarnations, and the fall of men, and that's capital F, capital M. So he's talking about metaphysical concepts, the fall of men, and the length of their early history. Also, the origin of the orcs, and above all, the power and the significance of Melkor/Morgoth, which was enlarged to become the ground and source of the corruption of Arda. So because Professor Tolkien was really absorbed in the mid 1950s and the later 1950s with the fact that he'd constructed a world that everybody was looking at now, and everybody was understanding a lot more detail about it with the popular consumption of the Lord of the Rings. Remember, it was a wildly successful book, and it became even more of a bestseller in the 1960s. But even in this time, it's fascinating to me that Professor Tolkien is concerned with light and darkness and metaphysical concepts of free will and the dominance of free will within, the elves. And here we go. You want to talk about hair? Everybody in the chat wants to talk about hair. Okay, so part 2, body, mind, and spirit. Introduction. As seen in part 1, and further in various texts published in Morgoth's Ring, by the late 1950s, Tolkien had become greatly interested in the nature and the relationship of spirits and bodies. In Quenya, the spirit is called Fia or Fie, okay? And that's F-E-A with those little beautiful dots over the E. And in plural, the plural of the Quenya word Fie is Fiar, and bodies, the Hroar. And that is being like men and elves, that they are by nature a union of a material body and a created immaterial soul. So he goes on, and here's a section that people want to know about. In part 2 of The Nature of Middle Earth, here's the section number 4 called Hair. This text is found among notes in an explanation of revised names and genealogy and is dated by Tolkien December 1959. It is written in a clear hand in black nib pen. These notes are mostly linguistic and etymological, but one passage pertaining to words related to hair provides certain details that are of relevance here. Ingwi, the elf, this is not Carl Hostetter talking. This is now the text of Professor Tolkien writing. Ingwe had curling golden hair. Finwë and Miriel had long dark hair. So had Fëanor and all the Noldor, save by intermarriage, which did not often take place between clans, except among the chieftains, and then only after settlement in Eman. Only Finwë's second son, by Indis, had fair hair, and this remained generally characteristic of his descendants, notably Finrod. Elwë and Olwë had very pale hair, almost white. Melian was dark, and so was Luthien. There you go. Straight from the horse's mouth, telling us which of these great elves from the past legends had fair hair or darker hair. So Melian had dark hair, and so also did Luthien. The editor goes on to note, this is a convenient place to give a late 1969 transcript note found elsewhere amongst Tolkien's linguistic papers, as follows. The base word N-A-L, nal, means shine or glitter, always with a reference to the reflected radiance from a bright surface, as in the name Gil-galad, star of radiance, given to Finwë, last high king of the Eldar, because of the radiance of his silver hair, armor, and shield. That, it is said, could even in the moonlight be seen from many leagues afar. The same word occurs in the name Galadriel, kinswoman of Finwë, quote, Lady of the Radiant Crown, referring to the shining of her golden hair. Okay, nice to know these details about hair. And that's it. Very short. That little section I read you is less than half a page. Now let's go on to something that I found really interesting, mind pictures. Now, Justin, this is not one of the sections that the people in the chat voted on, but
I still want to know.
this is about telepathy, mind pictures, okay? This is section 7. And the editor, Mr. Hofstetter, says, this text arose as a digression in the text presented in chapter 14, the visible forms of the Valar and Maiar, below. It was previously published in slightly different form in the Parma Eldalamberon, issue 17, back in 2007. Okay, so some of this has been published in one of those magazines, the literary scholarly magazines that are published within the Tolkien Society. And for further discussion of communication between minds, see chapter 9. Okay, listen to this. Professor Tolkien says, the High Elves distinguished clearly between fanar, the physical raiment adopted by the spirits in self-incarnation, as a mode of communication with the incarnates, and other modes of communication between minds that might take visual forms. They held that a superior mind, by nature, or one exerting itself to its full in some extremity of need, could communicate a desired quote-unquote vision direct to another mind.
Hey,
The
so
receipt.
Cliff,
This
Spartan
is
in the
telepathy. He's describing telepathy.
but I think that's already known because Spartan in the chat room says beings in Arda have telepathy, but most humans forgot how to do it.
That is not a reference that I'm clear on entirely, but the telepathy that we see regularly practiced in the Lord of the Rings novel is between the bearers of the Elven rings, Gandalf, Elrond, and Galadriel. And Peter Jackson does a lot of scenes of telepathy with the Elven ring bearers speaking to each other, you know. And even in The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, there's a moment of telepathy between Galadriel and Gandalf. And that's because they were the bearers of the rings. But right here, Tolkien is talking about his concerns about mind pictures outside of that use of the three rings at all. So let us continue. It's very short.
But the whole meeting in the Hobbit of Galadriel and the wizards and Elrond was all telepathy. Like they're all telepresence, right? Or Saruman phoned in.
No, they were all speaking to each other, and Saruman never possessed any Elven ring and was not involved in telepathy in the feature films. No, that's not the case. So allow me to continue where I was in this very short section. Okay, the High Elves held that a superior mind by nature, or one exerting itself to its full in some extremity of need, could communicate a desired vision direct to another mind. The receiving mind would translate this impulse into the terms familiar to it from its use of the physical organs of sight and hearing, and project it, seeing it as something external. It thus much resembled a fana, except that in most cases, especially those concerned with minds of less power, either as communicators or receivers, it would frequently be less vivid, clear, or detailed, and might even be vague or dim, or appear half transparent. These visions were in Quenya called Indemar, mind pictures. Men were receptive of them according to the records of the time, mostly when presented to them by the elves. Now, this is the first time I've ever heard anything, at least in my wanderings through these posthumously published books, about mortal men being shared telepathy images from elves. This is the first I've ever heard of this. So this is an intriguing concept. Men would...
Hey, whoa.
Go ahead.
Were they reciprocating images, or only one-way transmission?
I haven't gotten to that yet. Allow me to continue. Tolkien only says, quote, men were receptive of them. Okay, according to the records of the time, mostly when presented to them by the elves. To receive them from another human being required a special urgency of occasion, and a close connection of kinship, anxiety, or love between the two minds. In any case, Indemar were by men mostly received in sleep. There you go. Mostly received in dream, in sleep. If received when bodily awake, they were usually vague and phantom-like, and even caused fear. But if they were clear and vivid, as the Indemar induced by elves might be, they were apt to mislead men into taking them as real things, beheld by normal sight. Though this deceit was never intentional on the part of the elves, it was often by the men believed to be. Whoa, that is a mind-blowing little mini chapter. Men would receive mind pictures in dreams from the high elves and were suspicious of it, and sometimes it caused fear among them when they received these images. And it has nothing to do with elven rings, evidently. This is really interesting.
Well, so
now,
my first question is Sauron an elf? And is the expectation that he would have this power?
No, you know that Sauron is one of the Maiar. He is one of the Maiar spirits. He was not an elf, you know this. And he took on form, physical form, the way that Maiar spirits, Saruman and Gandalf and Radagast took on physical forms. But they were still Maiar.
So would he have this power?
No, Professor Tolkien is not mentioning in this note the Maiar at all. He only mentions the high elves, the Noldorin. And the Noldorin are those elves who were the first to answer the call and go back to Valinor.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is really intriguing. Okay, you want to see this?
Can you remind me? Are there evil elves?
Oh, gee, I don't know. There are a lot of evil men who do evil things.
Right.
Even in the Silmarillion, there are dwarves that cannot be trusted, and they do evil things.
Right.
And in the case of Fëanor and those who followed him, they perpetrated the greatest evil, and they killed their own kind. And they slew them at the waterfront and stole the boats. They stole the boats, and, they did all kinds of evil stuff. So is it possible for elves to behave badly? Yes. Yes, they behave very badly sometimes. Yes, they do.
So there is a record of malicious elves that now that we know that they have this power,
well,
as a race.
Most of that is related to stories in the Silmarillion with Fëanor and the surviving sons of Fëanor, all of those elves who took the oath of Fëanor. It usually involves badly behaved elves in that vein, mostly in that. Yes. You know what? It's time for you to reread the Silmarillion, my friend.
Yeah, at this point, I want to go into the TV show completely as cold as I can and appreciate the show for what it is.
You're not going to be able to make cost comparisons if you're doing that. You're going to need to go into the show knowing what they changed and what was weird.
No, you need to go into the show knowing what they changed. I want to love this show. No. I want to love this show on its own merits. Spartan in the chat room says...
Alex also mentioned Meglin as being an elf who behaved with evil behavior. That's also quite true.
Sauron, as a Maya, can do telepathy as he showed with Pippin in the book. But
that was using the Palantir.
That was using the Palantir. Yeah. So, this is interesting.
This is interesting. Okay. So let me read a couple of chapters from the Elvish reincarnation chapter. You ready for this?
Hold up the book again and remind everybody, we are reading from J.R.R. Tolkien's new book, just published. It might even be at your local bookstore. You guys call ahead. Check your local bookstore. Go get it. You need to read this. This is changing all the rules about Middle Earth. It's the nature of Middle Earth.
Well,
Tolkien
it's not
intended the.
it's not changing all the rules. It is giving us an amazing vision into the rules he wanted to consider that were most important to him. But it's going to be filled with weirdness and contradictions, and him rethinking it over and over again. I don't know if it's going to rewrite the rules, but it's going to give us some
It's going to
powerful
expand.
powerful debate we will have.
It's going to
Powerful debate.
expand what's possible, and it is our understanding that the notes, J.R.R. Tolkien's notes that were provided to the author of this book, were also given to the writers' room of Amazon's billion-dollar TV show. So it is our understanding that everything in this book was also provided to Amazon as they were writing the scripts and crafting the world. And now that we know for sure that we're going all the way back to the era of the Chew trees, and we're going all the way forward to the second age of Numenor, there's a lot to digest. And if Amazon really did have this new text to play with, they can do, the show may be able to do a lot more than well-read fans were expecting.
Possibly. Now, here's a section from Elvish Reincarnation, and I'm going to go about, I'm going to go many, many, many pages deep into this conversation, but that's just because these paragraphs are incredibly interesting to me. And I was reading them earlier. You guys know the difference between the Fie, which is the Elvish word for soul, that they describe as the spirit that inhabits the body, and the body they call the Hroa. Hroa is the body, and the Fia is the spirit or the soul. It might be pronounced Fie, I'm not sure, but continuing with this solid gold concept that we learned about a long, long time ago from the previous History of Middle-earth series. Right here, for the sake of argument, this is all Professor Tolkien speaking right here. For the individuality of a person resides in the Fie. A Fie alone may be a person, period. That's Professor Tolkien saying that the spirit itself of an elf, even without an incarnate body, can be considered a person. Now, let's go with this. Let's keep going with this. In the case of the incarnate, though they are by nature embodied, their identity resides no longer, as it does in things of corporeal life only, in that embodiment, but in the identity of the Fie and in its memory. A Fie of this kind requires a house by which it may inhabit Arda and operate in it. But a house exactly equivalent is sufficient for it will exactly correspond to its memory of its former house, and that memory being in the mind only and incorporeal will not be concerned with the history of the material used in the realization, so long as it is fitted for this purpose, but with the form only. Therefore, returning, the Fie will inhabit the rebuilt house gladly. Remember, we're talking about reincarnation of elves, and he just said that, the spirit needs a house, and it will gladly come back and re-inhabit a new house gladly. Okay? Even so, one might go on a journey, and while he was away, lightning might come and destroy his house. But if he had friends of subtle skill, who, while he was away, rebuilt his house and all of its appurtenances that had been ruined in exactly the same shapes, he would come back to this new house and call it his own. and continue his life there as before. And even if his friends reported to him what they had done, would he not still be content giving to the house rebuilt the same name as the old house had, and deeming that the evil chance had been healed? And now we're almost getting into this metaphysical conversation about how a spirit would come back and re-inhabit a new house, and it would still be the same spirit, the same fié. And now we're talking like about that mental exercise of Theseus's ship, which is what Vision and New Vision, White Vision had in conversation. You know, that whole big conversation about Theseus' ship in WandaVision. Did you guys watch WandaVision? Any of you remember? If the old ship of Theseus is taken apart board by board and plank by plank, and that is rebuilt, if it's rebuilt with new planks and new wood to become a new version of Theseus's ship, is it still the ship of Theseus or not? Or is it the replaced parts? And Professor Tolkien is having this ship of Theseus conversation right here on page 234, excuse me, page 254, where he's saying that the fié of the elf would come back to a whole completely rebuilt house and would be able to inhabit it gladly.
So let me translate this. Let me translate this into what Amazon could do with this text. Basically, every character in the early days of Arda can show up in Numenor. Basically, they have access to every elf that ever existed.
Well, the reason why Professor Tolkien, no, it is not to assume that. We are not to assume any of that at all.
Wait, but hold on. I'm trying to translate what Tolkien just wrote, and how do you, what is the actionable item that you can do with this new information and put it and make a TV show exciting?
He's not trying to make a TV show exciting.
Professor Tolkien,
Professor Tolkien did not write this to make any bloody TV show exciting. Okay?
I know.
Let me finish. He wrote this stuff because he had decided to bring Glorfindel back. Now remember, it was not Liv Tyler as Arwen who saved Frodo at the ford of Bruinen. When the Ringwraiths, when the Nazgul were fully assembled and were going to get Frodo when he was at his most wounded, you know, that chapter, the flight to the ford?
Yeah.
It was Glorfindel. It was a reincarnated elf who came to save Frodo. Glorfindel being in the Lord of the Rings and being completely reincarnated was something that was on Professor Tolkien's mind. That is why he wrote this stuff. Because he realized he had Glorfindel in the early legends of the Silmarillion, and he wanted to use that character someday, and he died, and the character had to come back and be in the Lord of the Rings, which was now published. So Professor Tolkien was doing his own retcon. He was retroactively trying to figure out how to make his universe make the most sense. Let me continue with this concept. And remember, keep in mind the mental exercise of the ship of Theseus as we go on through this talk, all right? This is about a soul, a fié, coming back into a house, a living incarnate body that his friends had built for him, okay? He would be content, or at least he would accept with gratitude the work of his friends and find in it a sufficient means for the carrying on of his life in the same mode as was his wont. Alas, it might well chance that the house, or something within it, had for him a value not residing in itself or its fashion, but attributed to it by him, the owner, as being, for instance, the gift of one whom he loved. With the counterfeit, that is, the exact copy, he might then not be wholly content, saying to himself, quote, "This is not the same thing as the one that is lost," unquote. But this would be because he loved the history of the thing rather than any other quality that it possessed. And because that history was connected with a loved person, he attributed to it part of that love. This is part of the mystery of love and of the singling out by love of one thing alone in its oneness and history unique, which is of the nature of the incarnate, and that's capital I, incarnate. Such losses, not even the rehousing of the dead under the authority of the One, can avoid, for it deals with the future, not the past. Death is death, and it may be healed or amended, but it cannot be made not to have been. Going to close that book on that idea right there. So he's concerning himself with reincarnation, and he's also concerning himself with whether powerful nature of love and memory can make a reincarnated elf happy or not, or achieve normal bliss that he might otherwise not achieve. I think those are rather heady concerns for Professor Tolkien. And I'm going to dive deeper and deeper into this book with gusto. I'm going to be going deep into this stuff. It's
Cliff,
going to be fascinating.
will you just read this to everybody?
Sure. Why not? Sure. I'd be glad to read it to people. Why not?
Chat room. Would you sit on a 6-hour or longer live stream with Cliff?
No, God, don't do that to me. Don't do that to me, guys. Don't do that to me.
I just heard. Oh boy, Cliff! I just heard some interstellar nonsense. Remember that the most cringiest part of Christopher Nolan's Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey is what about love? Love will get us to the planet. Remember when there was that astronaut, that scientist that was like, the power of love will let us find the right planet. You just said that this all-powerful reincarnation magic is driven by love?
No, I just said that the power of history and love interferes with what would otherwise be a perfected process. That is what he was just saying. Okay, listen. Listen with your ears. Listen. The whole concept of reincarnation, as a lot of people in the YouTube chat are now appropriately discussing, is talked about in some detail in the Silmarillion, and more so in the History of Middle Earth series. But it's right here that an elf would be able to choose reincarnation. Right here. I'm continually puzzled about why Glorfindel never shows up in any film adaptation. I just never understood that. Really true. Elves, according to Spartan 343, elves can choose to reincarnate or refuse, or they can be refused by the Valar.
So, Cliff, do you want to see Glorfindel in Amazon show?
Yeah, very much so, because it's the first and only time that he'll ever be presented anywhere. So what are they going to do? Keep skipping over him? No, they should definitely have him. And if they want to talk about any kind of reincarnation, he's the guy to talk about with it. He's the character to have. But, that's all first age stuff. We don't know if the second age stuff is going to even bother.
We're going to the first stage. Actually, we're not going in the first stage. All we've seen is a photo of the light of the two trees, which is pre-first age. And we've seen a map saying we're going to Numenor in the second age. That's all we know. So we've got pre-first age and second age. Is it possible that we completely skipped the first age? And the photo that we've seen,
that photo we see is going to be just an opening prologue. Are you kidding me? Peter Jackson did it. They're going to do it. You're going to get a prologue of
the light of the two trees, explaining the light of the two trees.
What would you call the most categorically important events of the first age? they'll get through what they need to get through. But yeah.
That is fascinating. So out of all the stuff that you
Okay.
just read about hair and
Hair.
reincarnation and everything, what is new to you, Clifford?
What's new to me?
Was any
Um,
of that new or different than your previous assumptions?
um, yeah, a lot of this is new to me, but it's also um, it's amazing that a man as busy as he was would dedicate so much time to trying to get all the underlying postulates of his world to really function in a really big way. And he wanted to work on it so dutifully. What's most impressive to me is Professor Tolkien's sense of responsibility to his own sub-creation. In the larger analysis of this, it is wildly impressive that, unlike some other modern fantasy authors that I know, who will remain nameless, who will remain not mentioned, Professor Tolkien would not let small things go, and he would not let big things go. He wouldn't let any of it go with it being half-assed. He would not let anything go with it being so sloppy or half-assed. His extreme dedication and his sense of responsibility to his own brilliant sub-creation is what stands out to me as really remarkable, really remarkable. Yes, as the dragon demands, is reading this quote. This is a quote from the inside cover, and it's from The Guardian. The Guardian is making a statement about Professor Tolkien, and a thank you for the dragon demands for saying it. How, given little over half a century of work, did one man become the creative equivalent of an entire people? Which is true. It's remarkable how one man in less than half a century created the work of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. That's what's most impressive about it.
It
He
is
wouldn't
fascinating. Well,
he wouldn't let it go. He wouldn't let anything go. He wants to talk about
he was a control freak
in the best possible way.
in the
And
best
now
possible way.
look, we have mathematical tables about how the sun and the moon would move across the sky, and how, the lives of the elves would live on, and how time and its perception, look at this, time and its perception, dude, talking about how an immortal being would perceive it and have to live with it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, whoa, that's so cool. It's the
Cliff,
coolest.
We got a great question from the chat room, and I want your professional opinion. Okay, the pandemic has been hard on many people. Not everyone can afford to pay for Hulu and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and Netflix and HBO Max and Peacock and all. Money is tight right now. So the question, Cliff, is how essential is this book, both to the upcoming stuff that we're getting on shows, and how essential is it for fans of the books?
It is essential for those people who really take a delight in this. And that's what the editor, Mr. Carl Hostetter, says in his very opening foreword of the book. This is meant to be of great delight for those people who take great interest in that particular kind of stuff. So your mileage may vary. If you are a very, very casual Tolkien fan, you're not going to get much interest or much mileage out of this.
This is a technical book.
Yep.
This is basically a textbook like you would get at school. This is a technical textbook written by Tolkien and Carl Hostetter.
Yes.
This is not a narrative. This is the fundamentals of Middle Earth. And this book and these notes that are compiled into this new book supports what J.R.R. Tolkien said in many letters, that he envisions that future generations would build upon his stories and his foundations and the pillars that he establishes. And he anticipated future minds, both in written form and using the song and paint and song and
You know,
performance.
that might be one of the big underlying motivational reasons why Professor Tolkien went so far into calculating years and the course of the sun and moon and how his cosmogony would change from a flat earth to a round earth. And maybe because what you're saying is true, that he was intrigued at the concept of other artists coming to the table. He wanted to have more grit. He wanted to have more, meat and potatoes and grit in what was going on. I'd go along with that.
The quote, I believe, is other minds wielding paint and drama. That's the quote, right, Cliff, or a
Yes.
paraphrase? Paint and
Yes.
drama. He uses those phrases. Paint and drama can directly point to stage, screen, and television. That is paint and drama. That is the performing arts.
Indeed.
So Tolkien said, future minds, other minds wielding paint and drama will build upon the foundations and the columns that he has created. This text and these notes support that anticipation that this would happen. And so, Cliff, I have to, in this context, I think we're both in agreement here on what I just said. Now, where we might diverge is that earlier in this conversation, you said Tolkien didn't write for television. Tolkien didn't expect anyone to make TV shows. I disagree with that. I think his quote, other minds wielding paint and drama, specifically, that is Tolkien specifically predicting Amazon's TV show. Or a TV show. And so I think this text and these notes are Tolkien's best effort to lay some of those rules down. Like, here are the rules. If you're going to play in my world, here are the rules. And maybe, just maybe, after the Tolkien estate did the deal with Amazon for billions of dollars, and Christopher Tolkien greenlit this book and said, look, if we're going to get into this television business, we have to put this book out. Because we have to create some rules, some boxes, some confines, so these guys don't go willy-nilly.
That's a very interesting speculation, and I will not argue against it. I think that might be interesting to think about that. Very interesting.
To be clear,
maybe.
Christopher Tolkien approved of this book.
Well, yes, actually, Christopher Tolkien had worked personally with Carl Hostetter for many, many years. And it says right here, Christopher handed me a whole bunch of stuff. He's like, this is how this all happened, when I was working at the time, right here, okay, for nearly 25 years, back in 1997, in my capacity as one of the authorized editors of his father's linguistic papers, I received from Christopher Tolkien a bundle of photocopies of various manuscript and typescript materials, which he referred to collectively as, quote, late philological essays, unquote. And so that's how it started. Years ago, Christopher Tolkien said, here, Carl, here's a whole stack. Here's a whole bunch of copies. What do you think of this stuff?
So back to that question, is this an essential book? It is a textbook of rules and regulations.
It is very much an essential textbook for the hardcore Tolkien fan. It is an essential textbook for any dungeon master who is trying to create a game campaign or a campaign within Middle-earth.
It is an essential book for a Tumblr /fic writer.
It might even be essential for the the writers in the writers' room at Amazon Studios. Maybe.
Which
But
we've
for
heard
the
that
casual,
they had access to this.
if you're a casual reader and you find it difficult to read, you know,
The
The Hobbit,
encyclopedia.
and you find it difficult to read the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings, and you don't really want to go back, you know, there's some people who reread the Lord of the Rings over and over, and some people read it annually. So if
Some
you're one of
people don't
those,
read it
if
at
you're one of
all.
those, yeah, and some people don't read it at all. So there you go. And look at the time. It's already 6:25. Would you believe it?
Hey, before we go, the
Would you
chat
believe it?
room has been a buzz. You guys have probably seen the chat room on screen. The chat room has been a buzz about, hey, what's going on with War of the Rohirrim, and you know, is it in Peter Jackson's world? Let me just tell you, it is a Philippa Boyens project. Peter Jackson's not involved. Peter Jackson's not producing it. Has nothing to do with Weta. It has nothing to do with 3'6" and Park Road Post. This is Warner Brothers Animation, Adult Swim, Jason DeMarco at Adult Swim Cartoon Network, the creator of the anime block that they show every Saturday night. He is producing this. Philippa Boyens is right now a consultant, but she's in the writer's room because she's not writing it. You know who's writing it? Two of Cliff's favorite people in the whole world, the showrunners of The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance.
Yay! Hooray!
So
Hooray!
they canceled The Dark Crystal, and Warner Brothers said, hey, how about you write us a Rohirrim anime? So that's their next project. The Dark Crystal showrunners are writing this movie. It's going to be directed by the director of Ghost in the Shell, and it's going to be animated and designed in Japan.
Standalone complex. There are many different
Yes.
iterations, and that's the one iteration of Ghost in the Shell.
So,
Okay.
all of those people are very powerful, creative. Now, Cliff, you know how Hollywood works. Like, these are very powerful, very creative people. Not one person is going to have a definitive stamp on it like Peter Jackson did, because you have a Ghost in the Shell director, you have the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance writers, you have Philippa Boyens consulting on the lore, and you have the producer of all the anime on Cartoon Network. So these are all very highest caliber quality people. This is not a Peter Jackson project all in the slightest. Do you think, Cliff, that
Okay, it is not, however, it is not a Peter Jackson project, but Andrew in the chat is correct to point out that doesn't rule out the anime being in continuity with his 6 films.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Cliff, as a fan, would you like to see this anime in the Peter Jackson cinematic timeline?
Sure, why not? But to be honest, there's more than one Peter Jackson cinematic timeline. Did you know that? There's a theatrical version, and there's also an extended edition timeline, which has a whole bunch of different other stuff, and all these other characters have different destinies. And
Hold on. Wait, you're blowing my mind right now. Wait,
that's
hold
just
on.
me. That's just one man's opinion.
You're
one man's
saying
opinion.
This would explain why the big Middle Earth Collector's Edition 31 discs still includes the theatrical editions. Are you saying that there is a strategy creatively to keep putting the theatrical editions out?
Maybe. I think the theatrical version doesn't have anything of Saruman and his ultimate fate. The theatrical version has important details of Galadriel giving gifts to the members of the Fellowship, and all that stuff in the extended version includes material that makes the theatrical a very different experience. And so, in my mind, I think that's a different world. The theatrical world
in
Peter
your mind
versus extended cinematic universe. That's just me.
Wait, so let me ask you this. If the theatrical and extended editions are two separate universes, can the Scouring of the Shire still happen in the theatrical cinematic universe.
Whoa. I hadn't thought about that, but okay. The scouring of the Shire could definitely happen in Peter Jackson's world, but
Would
it
fans
couldn't be.
accept that? Would fans accept that
It would have.
extended editions are its own thing?
I would, because even a lot of people have never seen it, and they don't know what happens to Saruman. So you could talk to the millions and millions of people who've only ever watched the regular theatrical versions of the film, and they'd be like, "What about the scouring of the Shire? You know, what happens to Saruman?" They might be thinking the exact same thing that everybody else was thinking.
Rory in the
what
chat
happened
room,
to Saruman?
Rory in the chat room is saying, "Don't be ridiculous, lads. This isn't Loki."
This isn't Loki. You know what? That would be really cool to see the scouring of the Shire done properly. And it would, if you're going to do it in Peter Jackson's universe, then sure, you might as well stick with that distinction that the theatrical universe of PJ's films still has a Wormtongue and a Saruman alive in it.
Spartan in the chat room says it right there.
I would go with
Multiverse
that.
is a fan's friend. Multiverse is a fan's friend.
You don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just blabbing right now, but I think that
there's room for everything. So, and then circling back on something in the chat room we brought up earlier today, that Fellowship of Fans was reporting Owain Arthur is an important Dwarven character. Cliff, what the fans are saying is that he could be the dwarf king Narvi, not a king, the dwarf craftsman Narvi, who lived in Khazad-dûm and formed a friendship with the elf Celebrimbor. Together they made the Doors of Durin. So we might be looking at the dwarf craftsman that makes the Doors of Durin. Cliff, isn't the Doors of Durin the one that you have to speak friend and enter?
Yeah, the Doors of Durin.
So we might be able. So Amazon could show the making of those dwarves, of those doors by dwarves.
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe they sure could.
And the reason I think that that's a good rumor, guys, is because I've heard some other stuff with other characters that have to do with the Doors of Durin that I'm not ready to put out in the world yet. But this aligns a lot. So Narvi, Narvi, look him up on the Tolkien Gateway. Look up Narvi. There's not much about him, but there's plenty that Amazon can play with a dwarven craftsman that is so skilled. He builds the Doors of Durin, and honestly, it would make sense to have the Doors of Durin in the pilot episode, because everyone in the world is familiar with these doors. So if you want to build some connections to fans, you'd be like, "Oh, I know those. Melon. I know those." So anyway, Cliff, thank you for reading. Oh,
hold on. Before we go, this is really an intriguing concept. Before we close the show, and I want to say thank you, really. Everybody in the live audience has been interacting with us, has been fantastic. But Rory has said, going back to the telepathy chat, the conversation about mind pictures, he says from the Fellowship of the Ring, and he's referring to the book, not the movie, when Frodo leaves the Shire with Pippin and Sam, Frodo says, "Listen, the elves are coming this way," said Frodo. "We have only to wait." The singing drew nearer. One clear voice rose now above the others. It was singing in the fair elven tongue, of which Frodo knew only a little, and the others knew nothing. Yet the sound, blending with the melody, seemed to shape itself in their thought into words which they only partly understood. This was telepathy, putting shape into thought from an unknown language. You know what, Rory? I think that's an absolutely outstanding idea. Maybe you're onto something. I hadn't ever thought about it that way. And thank you so much for presenting that really cool concept. And I'm going to go back and look at the original novel and see if there's any hint of these other things where that kind of mind picture telepathy stuff that Tolkien is talking about. And if you want to learn more about it, kids, grab yourself a copy of The Nature of Middle-earth.
You know, that's the best thing that this book can do, is give you a deeper appreciation for a book you've probably read 100 times, The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. This book, this new book, will give you a greater appreciation of, like, oh, I know what's happening now. I know how that is happening. I know what's going on now. When he hears a whisper on the wind, like, I know what's powering that, because Tolkien has established some rules.
It means that if Professor Tolkien wanted to dig deeper into this stuff after the publication of the Lord of the Rings, it's because I think he wanted us to know. He wanted a lot of us to maybe appreciate his work on a deeper level in the way that he was appreciating it himself. And this is a wonderful thing. Definitely $35 well spent. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl Hostetter, for editing and putting all this stuff together. You guys and gals, everybody in our live audience, you are the reason why our community continues to be such a rewarding community to be in. It's because of you all. So thank you. Thank you for making this a really open and wonderful chat. It's a really good show. And let's see if we can get through this together. We'll get more news, and we'll get more rumors, and we'll try to debunk them, and we'll try to inflate them. And we're going to do what we're going to do. It's theonering.net. And whatever rumors come our way, we're going to try to get to the truth of it, and we'll have a little bit of fun along the way.
And if you guys are going to DragonCon this weekend, it is this weekend in Atlanta. The OneRing.net will be there. Our old friend Kirsten, Green Dragon, Jim Wirt, who's been on the show many times over the pandemic, and several of our regulars will be from the OneRing.net will be in Atlanta this weekend. For me and Cliff, we're on the West Coast, and I'm just not. Yeah. I'm not ready to go back to conventions. I'm just not.
Not yet.
I'm vaccinated. Please get vaccinated, but I'm not ready to hang out in crowds right now, yet.
Nope.
And that's just a psychological thing.
And that's okay too.
So the One Ring will see you at DragonCon. And have a great holiday weekend. Labor Day weekend.
Great holiday weekend.
And get your homework is get Tolkien's new book. If it sounds interesting, start reading it, and we'll be here every Tuesday to talk about it. Bring your questions. So your homework is to read the book, write down your questions, and Cliff will answer them.
No, I won't. Oh my gosh, really? Okay. Well, you really put me on the spot, you asshole. You really put me on the spot. Right. That's how it works. Well, let's just say you brought out the best in me today, and I can only do my best in the future. I'll be as good as I can. And I'm going to lose this accent. I'm going to lose it really bad.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Taking this out. You guys, don't let Justin put me on the spot anymore. Gosh.
Boy,
okay. Well, it looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. We've got a meat and potatoes conversation to have, and yes, we're going to have a lot of healthy debate and conversations, and this is going to be 24 karat gold when we get through these pages, and much more stuff to talk about. And again, my acknowledgement to our worldwide audience. Thank you for being so friendly and open-minded and open-handed. We love you guys. Thanks for being with us. Wonderful audience as always. Next Tuesday, we'll be back right here on Torn Tuesday again, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Until then, I wish to say good night and good luck, or better yet, buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye, everybody.
Bye. How about that Finrod news?